Well, everyone, welcome back to Flourish with Felicity. Today, I'm going to be speaking to Manning Seals. He owns a remote closing agency for online fitness coaches. He started this agency around November of 2022 and has been around the fitness scene for since he was around 15 years old. So he's been in here for a while. So thank you so much for having on once again. Super excited to get chatting.
Of course, of course. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Awesome. All right. So let's start off with tell us a little bit about your backstory. So anybody who's listening to this who doesn't know you kind of knows you a little bit more than just your little intro.
Yeah.
And then we'll dive into some questions where I get to pick your brain.
Yeah, I guess I'll start out with I guess how I started the sales agency. So I was going to college. I was at University of Houston. So I went there for literally 3 years. I'd put myself through college those first 3 years. And then on my third year, I was like, okay, if I decide to finish this out, I'm going to be probably like $30,000 in debt. So I made the decision to drop out of school. I didn't really have a plan at the time. I was working at HEB. For those who don't know what HEB is, that is a grocery store here in Texas. That's where I'm from. So born and raised in Houston, lived here my entire life. And then basically after I dropped out, I was like, okay, what can I do to start making money that is not working at a grocery store? So I decided to, cold approach a few guys at while I was out who looked like they were doing well. So I walked up to this guy at a bar and I was like, hey man, you look like you're doing really well. You've got good jewelry on, you've got nice clothes. Like, what do you do? And he's like, oh, I work in home remodeling. So we end up chatting. I had a really good conversation. He's there with his friends. And then he ends up offering me a job by the end of the night, doing door-to-door sales for the company that he owns. So I started out doing door-to-door sales, home remodeling, like windows, roofs, things like that. Like if anybody has ever worked door-to-door, they know how much rejection you face doing that job. So that kind of set me up for sales. And I worked for a really good company. They're worth over $1 billion. Shout out Power Home Remodeling, because that is literally what gave me the foundation of what I know now, sales wise. So I worked with them for a year or so. And then I decided, you know what, I don't want to keep beating up the pavement. I would rather, do some other sort of sales thing. So I got into industrial sales. I did that for about a year. And then maybe 6 months into that, I got an opportunity from a friend doing remote closing for fitness coaches. And he's like, hey man, I think you'd be good for this. I've got a coach who is really looking for a closer. I know you're good at sales. I know you're good at talking. So would you be interested? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So I started that part-time in November of 2022. I was working my 9 to 5, and then I would come home. I would start my sales calls at 6 o'clock. I wouldn't get done until 9:30 or 10 most nights. I would hit the gym at 5 a.m. every day so that I could accomplish all those tasks every day. So I was probably doing both of those for, I don't know, maybe 6 months or something like that. And then I actually got let go from my full-time job because it was apparent that I was not fully focused on it anymore. And the company was also going under. So that's when I decided to start taking my sales agency full-time. And yeah, I was pretty lazy with it to begin with. And then as time went on, I was like, okay, I could actually make something of this. So then I started taking it super seriously. And yeah, that's kind of how I guess got into this business model. And then I've been working out since I was 15. I played football in high school. And that was the main thing about working out that I wanted. I was like, let me get stronger so I can be better at football. But yeah, that's the gist of me, I guess.
Wow, that is so cool. So you went everywhere and you've done everything in sales. I've heard door-to-door sales is the absolute hardest because yeah, the rejection rate is
Yep.
unbelievable. What is the craziest story in sales pre your agency
I'll be
that
honest
you've
with you.
ever had?
Yeah, I'll be honest. There's a lot of really rough stories that I experienced doing door-to-door sales. Probably the one that I would say stands out the most that I can remember off the top of my head was we would pitch in twos. So there was somebody on the other side of the street. I was on one side of the street. We would just go all the way down. So this girl on the other side of the street is having like a phenomenal conversation. She's pitching, it's going well. Meanwhile, I am on the other side of the street getting absolutely screamed at by some guy telling me to get the F off his lawn. Like, he's like, get away from me, all this stuff. And like, I was like, I just walked up. I had just walked up and I hadn't even knocked on the door. And he comes rushing out and is like screaming at me. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And I like look over and she's having a great conversation, laughing across the street. And that had happened like 4 times that day. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm getting absolutely beat down while she's setting appointment after appointment because like my whole role was I was an appointment setter at the time. So I guess you could relate that to like DM setting, but like in person. So that was like what I was doing at the time. And so, yeah, I just got cussed out like 4 or 5 times that day. And it was just not a great experience. It was like peak summer. It was like 110 degrees in Houston. And I went and sat in my car for probably the rest of the shift because I was like, yep, I'm not doing this. I was like, this was too much rejection for me at that point. I was like 21 at the time. So I was relatively young. So
That's
yeah, that was probably it.
wild. Yeah, no, I kudos to you for doing that because yeah, that's tough, especially when it's someone speaking to your face. Over the phone is one thing. I've
Sure.
never done door to door. I've only done like on the phone sales. And even that rejection is still
It still
hard.
burns.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I would say any rejection is no matter
Yeah.
what you're doing. Crazy. So with that being said, what about the rejection process kind of taught you, like, what made you fall in love with sales to keep doing it, especially being rejected so many times and just getting
Well,
no?
I guess like I had a knack for it. Like I was good at talking to people. I
Yeah.
enjoyed having conversations with like individuals, whether it was like just like at a random place, whatever. Like I just like talking to people. So I guess it probably stemmed from my dad because like when I was younger, we would go anywhere we would go. He would talk to someone like they were his best friend, and I'd always be like, "Do you know that guy?" And he's like, "No, I don't know him." I'm like, "What the heck? Like you guys seem like best friends." So that kind of rubbed off on me. And then I guess what like really made me keep going is because I realized I was like good at it. Because even though like I did have a lot of days where I was facing rejection, I did set the company's like I guess record for the most appointments set within my first month working there. So
Oh,
I want to
congratulations.
say it was like 26 appointments set in one week. And that was like, I ended up getting like a $3,000 bonus because I had set so many. And I was like, oh, it's like, so I can make a lot of money doing this. And like, I was 21. So like, I had freshly dropped out of college. Like, I had gotten like a $4,000 paycheck for like 2 weeks of work. And I was like, oh my God, like, that's like really good money for me. Like, I was used to making about $300 a week at HEB. So I was like, okay, like, I just 10x'd my income. Like, I want to do this.
For sure.
And then like I guess like I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I was like, okay, if I have like some skill here, I guess like I should capitalize on it. And my dad, I guess, was probably one of those like contributing factors. He's like, dude, he's like, you're like, you know how to talk, like just keep doing this, keep trying. So when I went to that industrial sales job as well, I ended up setting the company record because I was an SDR there to start out with. So I was an SDR, so sales development rep for anyone who doesn't know what that is.
Mhm.
Um, and I started out cold calling. I ended up setting like 16 appointments in the first week, and that company had never seen anybody like set over 5 appointments in a week. So I ended up getting promoted within 2 months from SDR to account executive there, where they gave me like a company card, a company truck, like all these things kind of set the expectation. I got a nice salary bump, and I was like, okay, it's like this is cool. Like actually maybe I do have something here. So
Yeah, for
I
sure.
did that. And then I guess it just transitioned into, okay, like how can I make more money? Like I was making okay money doing the industrial, but I was like, I want to make more money. So I need something on the part time, like whatever that is, I want to figure it out. And then that's whenever I got offered the closing gig. And I was like, okay, I was like, this is what I was asking for because I prayed to God about it. I was like, I need you to give me something, like just lay it in front of me, let it be something that I'm looking for. And it kind of just fell into my lap, to be honest with you. And I just haven't quit since, I guess.
No, that's beautiful. So for someone who wants to get into sales and wants to like learn how to converse with people, because that I feel like is either you're born with a conversational aspect to you or you have to teach yourself. And it's
Yeah,
a hard thing to learn,
for sure.
to be able to be social with others. So what is the biggest lesson you've learned in a sense of having these conversations with others and like how to navigate that?
Yeah. I would say understanding human psychology is like first and foremost, like being able to read somebody. Like I practice ethical sales, so I'm not gonna like, I like to consider myself pleasantly persistent. So I'm never going to overstep to where someone gets like furiously angry with me because I just won't shut up or anything like that.
Mhm.
So I would just say like understanding conversational skills. If you're somebody who, like, let's say you're just younger and you haven't had a whole lot of conversational skills, you've never been in a position to understand how to talk to someone properly, just put yourself out there. Have rejection. Rejection is so good for you. And like, I know that a lot of people probably don't want to experience rejection, but like, it is probably what has molded me into being able to work for myself fully now. So if you're somebody who just like, one, you have never like been good at sales or even know where to start, if you can do like literally start door to door. Like I actively search out door to door salesmen now for my own employees because like I understand the grit that it takes to actually do that. And then like I just think that like that is a humble person, someone who can like walk the pavement, knock 100 doors a day, get maybe one or two yeses. Like that's like something I'm like, okay, like that person knows what it takes. And then especially if they had good training. As for like training wise, if you're looking for training, I would say like you could literally look up any sort of like sales objections on online. Just start out with that. Um, like there's people that teach courses all the time. Like I have a course, but it's not something I really put out there. It's more or less for like employees that come in. I just teach them how to do things through my own course. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, I would just say like YouTube is your biggest friend. YouTube University, I'm a big fan of that. Considering I dropped out, so that's where I got a lot of my ideas, and actually how I started my agency was because of YouTube. Like
Mhm.
I don't know if you ever know who like Uman Godsi is, but he was a huge inspiration for me. I binged like 28 of his episodes, and I made like 6 to 10 pages of notes of like what he did, so on and so forth. And so with all of that, I was able to implement certain things, obviously very different niches, but I was able to implement certain things that really helped me out. So big advocate for YouTube, and like just using other people's success stories to help you out. Hopefully that answers your question
Yeah,
properly.
no,
Okay,
absolutely.
cool.
There's a few things that you touched upon that I want to bring back.
Mhm.
I was actually a college dropout as well, which is really
Okay,
funny.
cool.
And so I've always preached that I've graduated from YouTube University and not my
Yeah,
actual college.
yeah,
But there's the two things that I really liked that what you said was your style of sales is pleasantly persistent.
yeah.
And
Mhm.
there's so many sales coaches out there, and being in sales myself at one point, I mean, I still am for my own business, but there's like you have to find your niche in a sense of like the way that you want to sell. Whereas was there any like I know you said Imangaji was a huge like influence for you in the sales
Mhm.
game. But did you I know like Grant Cardone is huge in sales. Did you look at any of these other major influences in that and test out the waters with different sales techniques, or did you just kind of slide into like the pleasantly persistent?
Yeah, yeah. To be honest with you, I never watched anybody. I didn't watch Grant Cardone. I didn't watch any of like these big
Hmm.
sales names. It was just not. I didn't agree with their style because like I'm a very laid back person. Like I don't get like super like in someone's face about something. Like I use somebody else's pain points to make it make sense for them, and then I just that's basically how I do it is I just make things make sense so somebody understands why this is going to work for them, why they need this, and then you can sell it that way. Like I'm not gonna I don't know, dig into somebody and rip them apart like just for a sale. Like that's just I don't know. I don't think it's ethical. Just from my standpoint, for like the business that I'm in, if I
Yeah.
because like obviously like I'm helping fitness coaches, like that's like I'm helping them sell like programs. So when it comes down to like somebody who's overweight or somebody who's looking to build muscle, like the way to get to them is not by getting in their face. It's by like appealing to their issues and like you've been struggling with this for like 3 or 4 years. Like do you want to wait another 3 or 4 years? Like, it's just being like casual and just like nice to them. And I guess where I got the whole pleasantly persistent thing, it was actually my first boss at that Power Home Remodeling company. So shout out Joe Green. He literally like he taught me like that style. like he's like, you never want to get on someone's bad side when you're trying to sell them, because like the principle of sales is people buy from people they like, not from just because of the product. So if they like you, they're going to buy from you. So if like you break something down in a way that like they still like you and it makes sense, like you're going to be able to sell it. So that's just kind of how I've carried it since I was like 21, so the last like 4 years.
Yeah.
um but yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, it's so true though, because like you're not going to pay your money is like you're buying into someone. And if someone doesn't like you, they're not going to want to buy into you. If
For sure.
they like you, they want to support you. And you're kind of playing into that and becoming their friend around that sales call.
Yep.
The other thing that you brought up was rejection is good for you. And I think that's a fantastic point because I feel like so many people are afraid of rejection. How did you overcome that? Because I know it's definitely from experience of door to door.
Yeah.
Is there any other ways that you were able to overcome this fear of rejection?
Honestly, like I was extremely nervous whenever I started, and I struggled really, really badly with it. Like my first day, I remember like the very first door I ever knocked, I didn't even get rejected necessarily. I just didn't know how to like take it. Like I could have turned it into a sale looking back at it, but like he's like, oh, like I have some time later today. I just don't know if I want to do it like this. And I was like, oh, okay. And I literally turned around and I walked away. And like I did not know how to continue. So I mean, honestly, most of it is just based off experience, and just putting yourself in uncomfortable situations and just like talking to people. So like there's this analogy my friend always uses. He's like, I'm going to talk to any and every girl because the one day that I meet my wife, like I want to be able to like know how to talk to a girl. So like I think about it like that. Like if you can just have a conversation with a grandma at the store or a mom or like, whatever, just have any conversation and just like know how to converse, even if they don't want to talk to you, just like make light of a situation. Like that is how you're going to be able to know what to say when the right situation comes. Obviously that's like a weird analogy, I guess, but like that is a really good way that I think works. Like it's just being able to have a conversation with almost anybody at any time, whether they want to talk to you or not. Like just maybe just asking somebody how you're doing, like how's your day going? Oh, I like your shirt, whatever. Just like chat with people. Like people like to have conversations. That's what I've realized over time.
No, yeah. It's just all through experience and putting yourself out there and just trying it out over and over and over again. And just saying hi.
Yeah,
Hi is the easiest thing to kind of just get a conversation going with someone.
absolutely.
I want to ask you a few questions about your current business because it's really
Mhm.
interesting that you've dove into the fitness industry.
Yeah.
But what do you see or foresee in the future the impact of your business in the fitness industry over the next year, 5 years? Like, where do you see that going?
Yeah, well, ideally, like I would like to build something that is one beneficial to like me and my team, but also extremely beneficial to coaches. So like I think the biggest issue with like most coaches' businesses now is like they don't have the time to go into everything, whether it's marketing, whether it's like sales content, just because their most of their time is spent on sales calls. So being able to like provide a service that like one we match, if not are better at closing for all of their sales, because there's always this dynamic of like if you're the coach, technically your closing percentage should be higher because you're the person they're buying it from. But if even in that case, like that's not always true because like even coaches don't understand like the right things to say when they get certain objections, just because it's not something that they're trained in. Their job is to train people to lose body fat or build muscle, not to fight objections on a phone call. So I think like what I really want to do is just be able to provide a service that like one, they believe and know that we can deliver. Two, it's going to be extremely beneficial to their life, their business in the terms of like, I have my time back. I'm not sitting on calls all day. I trust that this closer is going to take care of it. And I trust that they're going to hold my business in the right light whenever talking to it or talking to like a prospective client or whatever. So I think like, ideally a year from now, 2, 3, something like that. I would just like to be known as like the closing agency to go to that is going to like treat you how you need to be treated as a client and just like provide the best possible results you could get, not taking the calls yourself, so that like the entire stress of the sales process is offloaded and all you have to worry about is fulfillment when it comes to your clients and bringing in leads and things like that. Because I think that is the biggest limiting factor for most coaches, is the fact they don't have enough time, they don't understand sales properly, and just things like that. So does that answer your question? Was there another piece of that I missed?
No, yeah, that answers it through and through. It's so true because I see coaches in their businesses as well. And when we talk about sales, it is the most daunting topic for coaches to talk about, is because when you're a coach, you want to appeal to people because you just want to help them. And when you don't have the sales aspect, because yes, you're appealing to people in sales, but you're also trying to sell them. So they feel like they're trying to be like devious in a sense, but
Yeah.
it's not that. You're just helping guide someone's mindset in a sales call. Like,
Hmm.
you know, you need this. We both know you need this, but let's solidify that and let's put a payment down for
Yeah.
it, so you can get the help that you need. And it's so impressive that you have found this area where you see that trainers are struggling, and you're like, this is what I'm delivering, and this is who I'm trying to help. So if someone's a trainer, when should they even consider hiring you as a sales agency?
Yeah, honestly, like I have made a few mistakes in my past, like letting coaches on that probably were not ready for the service, and it didn't work out just because like they weren't in the position in their business where it made sense. So I guess the position where it really makes sense to hire a closer is like when your inflow is outpacing how much you can handle. So whether that's 10 sales calls a week, 15 sales calls a week, 20, whatever, like that's probably whenever you should even consider looking into it. So I'll just give an example
Mhm.
of one of my clients who's also a good friend of mine. You know him very well as well, Adrian Strover. So he decided to hire me once he was taking about 20 sales calls a week. He was like, I can't focus on marketing, I can't focus on fulfillment, so I need to hire somebody to take that spot. And he was so nervous whenever he hired me. He told me, he's like, I'm very nervous that you're not going to be able to close at the same percentages that I'm closing at, because like you're not me. And like it's just like a piece of my business that I'm handing off to somebody else. I'm very nervous. And when I came in, I was probably closing around 50%, working with him. He's got a very diverse demographic. So there's people with money, there's people without money. So it's like, 50-50 shots. So, the people that could be sold, they were sold. And now I close almost 70% for him consistently. Like every single month is like 65 to 70%. And I don't know how much he's told you about it, because I know you guys talk frequently, but he's extremely happy that like he decided to hand off that side of his business, because he has so much time now in his day to focus on marketing, focus on his current clients, and like actually like propel his business forward without being stuck to a desk all day, taking those calls. So I guess like really it's once you have all the systems in place that it takes to bring in leads consistently, such as like a setter or a DM or somebody that is like actively reaching out and bringing in applications for you, and then also, whenever you have, minimum 10 calls a week, I would say anything under 10 calls a week, it doesn't make a ton of sense to work with a closer, because that's what, 5 hours out of your week, like 30, 40 minutes, something like that,
Yeah.
each call. So it doesn't make sense to work with a closer then. And then if you're not making, oh God, I'd say probably over 10K a month, like if you're making under 10K a month just from coaching alone, it probably doesn't make sense. Just because of my business model, how I do commissions and things like that, like it probably just wouldn't make sense. Like if you're doing 5K a month and you just don't like sales, like you need to just like kind of suck it up, for lack of better words, and just learn to like it for a period of time until you just have more calls coming in and like it makes sense to work for somebody or have somebody work for you, in your business. So I would just say main points is have lead flow, have systems in place, um, and have the capability to take on a team.
Yeah, for sure. I heard the same thing with Adrian. He was very nervous at first,
Yeah.
but I mean, I see all the stuff inside of his business, and you
Yeah.
are absolutely crushing it.
I appreciate that.
And he is, I would say, a lot less stressed now because he can just work on client fulfillment and building his brand and his brand personality and do all the things that he loves to do. Um, with that being said as well, with like the 5K and you're like, just suck it up and do it, I 100% agree. Like, you also need to know the skill of sales. Like, even if it's just to a slight degree as a coach, it's super important to know and be able to, like, let's say that you're completely booked or they need to hop on some extra calls, or even like having a conversation with someone in the gym, you can turn that into a sale.
For sure.
And if you don't have those sales skills, you won't be able to. You're just going to do what you always used to do and just kind of cop out of the conversation
Yep.
and walk away.
Yep.
So I was wondering, do you find that often, like with Adrian, when you onboard a new coach, do they typically find a little bit of like a little bit of nerves when hiring someone like you? Because I feel like when you're a coach, your brand is your baby and your business is your baby, and like to hand that, it's a big hat to hold,
Yeah.
or to wear and to give off to you. Do you find that happen often, or is that just a few
Yeah,
coaches?
I would say vast majority of coaches that come in, they are nervous, of course. I mean, expectedly, like you are handing off a portion of your. It's the bottleneck of a business is sales, like bringing in people and like signing them. Like that is the biggest piece of the pie when it comes to sales. So definitely, most coaches are nervous. I think I've maybe had like two or three coaches ever that came in and just like were like, all right, like I trust you, like good luck.
Mhm.
And like one was my first client, and maybe it's personality type, but I think like, or maybe he just didn't even talk about it to be honest. But I think most people are a little nervous whenever they're looking to hand off their sales because they're like, is it or my sales actually in good hands? Like, are these clients like, what if I could have closed this person that and that closer could not? Like, it's those are all valid things, but like whenever you look at testimonials and like closing percentages, like it's like okay, if I'm consistently closing above 60% for this business and 55% for this business and 70% for this business, like there's no reason I'm not going to close that for your business as well. So one of the ways that I always try to like ease coaches into it is by like literally showing them my real life closing percentages, how many calls I'm currently taking for certain coaches, how many I'm actually closing, things like that. Are they high ticket, mid ticket, whatever? And I think every conversation I've ever had, like a coach has been like, okay, like I'm good to go. You're the real deal. Like that sounds good. Like I want to do this.
Yeah.
And then there is those few coaches that are extremely anal about everything and are just like every single sales call, they will shoot me a text. Hey, how's it going? Like, good luck on the sales call. And it's like, that's fine. Like that's, some people are just like that. But it's really not a lot of people that are like that just because like, once they see that you successfully close well and like you know how to handle it, you send them over a few recordings of your calls. So like, okay, like I'm comfortable with how he pitches it. He represents my culture, right? My brand, all of these things.
Yeah, it's huge, especially for culture fit, and making sure that, like, because again, there's so many different sales tactics and so many
Mm-hmm.
different ways. So finding your, like, no matter what business you're in, finding your ideal client,
Yep.
whether that be coaches or ideal clients for fat loss or whatever you're doing, it's super important. I do have a question pertaining to challenges that you face in your own
Mm-hmm.
agency. So, like, can you share a significant challenge that you have faced in your agency and how you've
Yeah.
overcome it thus far?
Yeah. I've had multiple challenges like when it comes to this. So good hires, that's going to be number one. Making sure that you have a good hire. I've made bad hires. I've made good hires. I've made bad decisions making, like bringing on certain clients. I've made good decisions bringing on certain clients. So I would say my biggest issue like that I have found is like I decided that I wanted to make it very easygoing when I started. I didn't want contracts. I didn't want to put anybody on contracts. I didn't see like that being something that would benefit me because like, I trust people. Like I give people the benefit of the doubt. And I think, okay, if someone's working with me, like they're going to be honest if they don't want to work with me and they'll give me some notice. Rudely, I was awakened to the fact that people don't give notice. They just decide, okay, I don't want to work with you. I don't want to work with you. So, and it's just then and there. So,
Mm-hmm.
I found a lot of things that I've been working on fixing. So now I have contracts that I implement. Everybody is like they pay in full. Like there is no like week by week or anything like that because I used to do weekly payments. Now I get everything paid in full. require a notice for cancellations, things like that, to protect myself and my business, because I've lost a lot of money, to say the least, in people just canceling without even like giving any notice. So and then same thing with employees, like bringing in employees, you'd think it would be pretty easy to find somebody who wants to like do remote closing and like be able to work from home and just like hop on a sales call and like have a conversation with somebody, because it's not really even a sales call, it's just a conversation. Like how me and you are talking right now, like that's how I treat sales calls. Like I just have a conversation, I get to know somebody, we laugh, we share a few cool things, and then I drop in the price. Like obviously it's a service, so it's going to cost something. But yeah, I'd say my biggest struggles have definitely been trusting people a little too much, giving people the benefit of the doubt, not doing contracts, certain payment structures that have needed changing, um, and then also like just understanding the structure of my own business and like what is going to be the most beneficial thing. Because realistically, I hired my first employee in the beginning of December. So that has been a learning curve for me of how to handle those things. Like at first, my employees weren't on contract. Like they're contractors, but they weren't on contract. So technically, if the coach wanted to, they could have said, "Oh, like I like your closer. I'm not going to work with you anymore. I'm just going to work with your closer," because I had nothing in place. Luckily, that did not happen to me. But looking back, I realized, oh, that could have definitely happened. So all of my contractors are on contract, non-competes, things like that. Um, and then also like what they can handle. So like me personally, like I have handled 5 clients at once, taking all of their closing calls all at once, which was like I was taking almost 15 closing calls a day. Um, because it was just like it was insane. Like that was an insane period of time, and I was able to do it, but it's not something that I would ever recommend any closer to do, just because it's too much. Like so, having to figure out the logistics of what makes sense per closer. So now I've like really, I guess, defined my offer, how it works, and like how many closers can handle what, things like that. So yeah.
No, yeah, for sure. Business is definitely an experiment. That's what I tell every single coach that I have talked to or worked with, even any business owner in general, is business is an experiment. You have to test different things, you have to try out new things, see if it works. If it fails, you got to switch and be creative with it too. And it seems like you went through that exact thing. And you're still going through it. Every time you step into a new level of business, it's just like, all right, how are we going to manage this? How are we going to handle this? But you learn and you constantly grow. So we went through a challenge. So now, what has been your greatest success of one of your clients? Like, what has been the best success client that you've had thus far?
Hmm. That's a good question. Best success story for my clients. I mean, between like allowing my clients, I mean, I would say multiple. There's not just one success story. I would say like there is one common denominator between all of these coaches, and it's the fact that they all have their time back. They do not have to focus on taking their sales calls. They don't have to focus on sitting on the phone. Am I going to close it? Like they are just able to trust me with each call that comes through and knowing, okay, like he's got it handled. His team's got it handled. So, for example, Adrian and then another client of Justin, like they literally, their setter books the calls. They get booked on my calendar. They don't worry about anything. I just shoot them a text as soon as I close them, and then it's their job to reach out to them. And all they have to worry about is fulfillment. Like they don't have to worry about anything on the front end. So it allows them to travel more. It allows them to post more content, focus on lead flow, and it's really a small sacrifice. Like it's you pay a little bit to get your time back, right? So, um, I would say like just the success story is really just the fact that they have their time back. They
Yeah.
have the freedom to not be tied to their computer for 5 sales calls a day, things like that, and they can really just enjoy their life again and focus on other sides of their business or other sides of their personal life. Without having the worry of, oh no, I've got a sales call in an hour, or oh no, like I've got 10 sales calls tomorrow. I can't do that,
Mhm.
So I would say that's what it is.
No, yeah, absolutely. That's huge for people is having their time back because time is like of the essence. Time is money too. So,
Absolutely.
oh, that's so cool that you've been able to tap in, give coaches their time back, and especially being a coach, having to. What I've found with a lot of newer coaches, because I work with a lot of coaches that are under that 10K mark,
Hmm.
is that they don't understand like how many hats they really have to wear when it comes to their business, because no one tells you before you become an online fitness coach that you have to worry about social media and the systems behind it, and then like you said, the sales calls and this, that, and the other. And they're like, whoa, hold up. So allowing the coaches that do hit that 10K month or get up there in their sales calls, giving that time back to them is going to be huge, because they can, like you said, focus on other things.
Absolutely.
So when you were just starting out, what is the biggest piece of advice that you wish you were told, either before you even started your sales experience or before you started your own business, or both?
don't don't slack off, put in the
Love
work.
that.
Like that is something I struggled with for a long time. Like inherently I'm a lazy person. Like I have always been lazy my entire life. Like I've always been able to go to the gym, eat my meals, do stuff like that, but when it comes to like actually working, I've always been a pretty lazy person. So overcoming that was probably one of my biggest obstacles. And as soon as I started taking my business seriously, I 3x'd it within a month. And it was like, oh my God, like that is actually what happens when you put in the work. So I would say like the biggest struggle always is going to be like putting the work for me. Like it's knowing that if I want success, I have to show up every day, and it's not just going to fall into my lap. Like there is people that are very lucky and like things just so happen to work out for them, but I am not one of those people. I'm not a very lucky person. So I just have to put in the work every single day, and I have to focus on always progressing, because whenever anytime I've ever gotten comfortable and I've gotten stagnant and been like oh, like I'm in a really good spot right now, like I can kind of take my foot off the gas, something always happens that sets me right back. I'm like, okay, it is time to relock back in and no longer be comfortable so that I can actually push this forward. And it's always like you take 3 steps forward to take 1 step back every time, and then three
Mm-hmm.
steps forward, 1 step back. So that's like been a repetitive cycle for me that like I have finally started to overcome. And a lot of it comes with just learning experience, like putting new things into place, contracts, new systems, better employees, yada yada. Like there's so many different things that come into place when it comes to like making a successful business. And then honestly, just like wanting it, because like people want to be like have money, but they don't like want to do the work. Like what I've found is as time has gone on, like I enjoy working now. I used to hate it. I used to find it like such a task and a chore, and now it's like I'm like, okay, like I get to propel this forward today. Like I get to actually work on something that is going to benefit me, especially working for yourself. Like that is something is such a fulfilling feeling, knowing that like, okay, like I did this today and I propelled my business forward. When I worked 9 to 5 jobs, like it didn't, I don't know, I didn't really care too much about like propelling their business forward because it wasn't mine. And that's kind of just something that's how I've always been. I've never really cared to work on somebody else's stuff. I'd always want to work on my own because like I was like, well, this is benefiting them, not me. So and maybe that's selfish, but that's kind of how I always figured it out. That I didn't want to work for somebody else, and like that this was the path I wanted to take, the entrepreneurial path or whatever.
No, yeah, for sure. So you said you've always known this, like you wanted to take this entrepreneurial path. Was this when you were very young? Was this when you started working for someone else? Where did this entrepreneurial like mindset come about?
Yeah, it started when I was young, honestly. I told myself I was never going to work 9 to 5. And then reality hit and I had to work 9 to 5 for a bit. But when I was like in high school, as I said, I was super lazy. So I did not like, I wasn't lazy necessarily. I just didn't like being told what to do. I really hate authority. Like it's just something I did not like for a long period of my life. Now I've gotten a whole lot better with it, but like I hated people telling me what to do. I hated having to show up on somebody else's schedule. Like I wanted to be able to do my own thing. So my first thought when I was younger was, okay, I am going to start like a gym, like because I loved working out. I was like, I'm going to start a gym, like I'm going to run a gym, I'm going to take out a loan, like this is what I'm going to do. And then I realized I'm not going to take out $100,000 loan. That's not happening. And there's so many other gyms, like it's a super populated thing. Like yeah, maybe it could have worked, but it wasn't something that was needed. There was already so many out there. So I realized that I did not want to work for somebody, especially when I was working for like my 9 to 5, like my industrial job, walking, doing door to door. Like I really, really already had that initial, I don't want to do this. But the more I actually work for somebody else, the more it registered that I don't want to work for anybody else anymore. And I really just want to be able to do my own thing. And I guess everybody thinks that when they start their entrepreneur journey, like you work less, like you're not going to have to work as much because you're knocking on somebody else's schedule. Well, the thing is, your schedule is a whole lot busier than somebody else's schedule. And like I work much longer now than I ever have. Like I maybe worked a smooth 6 hours when I worked a 9 to 5, like actually worked. Now I work like legitimately almost 10 hours a day. And like that is like actually screen time, like doing something. So, um, but I prefer it like this now. I think younger me would have hated it. But now like I actually enjoy it because I feel like it's a purpose in a way rather than just like it's just something of mine. Like it's something I actually can create and grow and like it can benefit other people at this point.
Yeah, like what you said, like you have to learn to love to work, and you've found what you love, and now you love to work. It's like the saying, like, you will never work a day in your life if you love what you do. And it's
For sure.
true. Yes, you're working maybe even 20 times harder than the average Joe who's doing the 9 to 5. But it doesn't necessarily feel like work. Yes, some days, of course, it's going to, but majority of the time, you're happy to scale and put in that work, like we were talking about.
Yeah.
So you were talking about like just the demands of how you are working like 10 hours now a day on the screen. How do you balance out the demands of running your agency and go to the gym and doing all of the things?
Yeah. Yeah. So one of my big things that allows me to like see my schedule every single day and like know what I can fit in there is I don't do same day calls. So whatever my schedule is at 8 a.m. that morning, that is my schedule for the day. So I don't let anybody book in calls during the day because I do have so many calls already. Like I'm balancing 3 clients currently. I have 2 employees currently. I've got a few other clients as well. Like it's not something where I can just have calls flow into my schedule and it actually work. Whenever I was just closing and I didn't have to worry about the agency and like I that was like my full-time thing was just closing only and not actually like running the business. That was totally fine. Like same day calls weren't a problem. Like I didn't mind doing it, but at this point like I have to have a structured schedule. So basically having a structure every single day, so a time that you wake up, a time that you go to sleep. This is something that like I'm good at some days and not so good at other days. Just being transparent, like I'm definitely not the best at it, but I am continuously working on it. I also have a 3 hour break middle of the day every single day to fit in the gym. So that's my gym, that's my lunch, that's time that I can like reset because like sitting on 4 hours of sales calls and then like doing that all day long is going to destroy my brain. Like I feel just like I can't have a conversation towards the end of the day if I do not have a break. So allowing me to go to the gym, have lunch, go do something like that is what has like kept me sane. And then also like just doing things that I enjoy day to day. So I enjoy waking up, going for a walk in the park, reading, doing that before the day even starts, and then being able to have like a good breakfast before I even get into the work day. I take about maybe 4.5 hours worth of calls in the morning, have a few hours to break, and then I take probably another 4 or 5 calls after. I'm sorry, 4 or 5 hours worth of calls after, and then after the workday, I used to be really really good about like getting straight back into like outreach or like working on back end things. Of recent, it goes back into getting comfortable. I have somewhat like taken my foot off the gas there. But we're back on track now. Things are back in full speed, but like just allowing yourself to have a week or two sometimes where it's like it doesn't have to be work every single day. Like giving yourself some time to breathe because for me, I've noticed whenever I do get in those work states where I'm legitimately working 12 hours a day and like like my mental health suffers, like my sleep suffers, like my progress suffers, like everything kind of goes down the drain. So giving yourself grace and allowing yourself to take some time when you need some time, setting up your schedule to where you have a break within that schedule every day, like even at a 9 to 5, like you have an hour lunch, like working for yourself, you can make that a 2 hour lunch, whatever it is. Like, I drive about 20 minutes to my gym every day. So that's about 40 minutes there and back every day. So that's why I have a 3 hour break, and it still fits because like most of the time during the day, most people can't even take calls when the hours that I, I take my break. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
hope that answers it.
No, it definitely does. That's extremely, like, it's so true too with like putting in the work, and like you said, like sometimes you backpedal. You
Mhm.
take these 3 steps forward, a step back, and you kind of have to as an entrepreneur, because I don't necessarily believe in the work life balance, but there is a sense of like you can't put in 14-hour days every single day for
Yeah.
your entire life. You're just going to be, I guess the term is, burnt out,
Yeah.
because you don't have time for yourself and time for life in general. And the point of you doing what you're doing is to scale yourself to a point where you can just enjoy life and do the things that you've always dreamed about doing on a drop of a dime.
Absolutely.
So you were talking about like you went from being this lazy person to now doing all this stuff. When did you learn to just start putting in the work? I know you said that like there was like this turning point. When did you learn that?
Well, this is gonna sound so cliche, but like honestly, I realized that no one was gonna save me, and like if I wanted what I always think about what I want, like I have to get to work. And
Yeah,
like I've always been somebody who like I love cars, like I love nice things, like I enjoy those things, like I enjoy the luxuries of life. And I was like, okay, like I will not be able to get any of these things if I do not get off my ass and start like putting in the work. Like that's
yeah,
really what it came down to. And then I think like the definitive time where I really started putting in the work was I realized that um, I had like after I got let go from that job, like I was on unemployment for a decent amount of time, like how what was it, like 4 months or something like that, maybe. And I was on unemployment, and like I was like kind of half-assing it, honestly, like the business. And like I was like, okay, I was like, I'm kind of taking a few sales calls here. I'm not really doing outreach. I'm not really trying. And then it was the last month of unemployment that I kind of like realized I was like, oh my god, like I haven't made any progress. I've been lazy.
mhm,
And that is whenever I kicked it into full gear and I started doing outreach. I started like telling my friends, like, hey, if you can refer somebody, like I'll give you $500, whatever, like trying to like get people in the door.
yeah,
And
for
that's
sure.
actually how I got my second client, was just by telling my friends, like, hey, like if you have somebody that because luckily I have a lot of friends that are coaches. I'm very well connected in the coaching space, fitness space, whatever. So I just told them all, I was like, hey, like if you could help me out, like I'll help you out. We can mutually benefit here. And so that's when I started getting clients. And literally after I started putting in the work and like realizing, oh shit, like nobody's going to save me. It's just me. I think I got 3 clients within 2 months, and then I already had one. So I was at 4 clients from one client within like just a month or two, like just really, really short period of time. And so, yeah, that was like really the turning point, was like when I realized, okay, like I have to do this or I'm going to be stuck. Like I'm going to have to forfeit my apartment and move back in with my parents or something. So, yeah,
Oh yeah, for sure. It's like it was a good wake up call,
for
for
sure.
sure. It sounds like. And then it's just funny. I just noticed this when you were talking about it with the luxuries of life. That would explain a lot about the Imangaji. So anybody who's listening to this, if you know who Imangaji is, he really taps into that. He actually started my love for like marketing and sales and stuff because I
Mhm.
bought one of his courses, and because I he's just such an intelligent being. He was able to do so much at such a young age, and that's a huge influence for someone in our 20s. Um being like, wow, look at all that he accomplished. Do
Mhm.
you have any like role models that you still look up to this day?
Um, I mean, honestly, Imangatsi is probably like the number one.
Yeah.
Imangatsi, Luke Belmar, like those are guys who are young and hyper competitive in their own space.
Hmm.
Just because like they're super successful, they're very smart. Like the thing that I like about them is the intelligence behind them. And I wouldn't even like say they're role models. I would say it's just people that I respect. Like I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
like that is someone I respect because like they did it themselves. Like they are both from foreign countries. Like they did not have a silver platter that everything was handed on. It was like they built it themselves. And like I
Mhm.
can relate to that very heavily. Like my parents, we were never poor, but we were definitely not middle class. And like at the time, like I was like, man, I was like, my parents, they argue about money all the time. Like I literally hear these conversations nonstop. And I did not want to be like that. But I guess a role model as well, it would be my dad because he is a hard worker. Like even though like he didn't have success until his older years, he is a very hard worker. Like he would be up at like 5 a.m. at work by 6, not get home until 6 or 7 at night every night. Like he would put in 10, 12-hour days. He started his own businesses. Like he put in a lot of work. So he was a role model of mine as well. And then, I mean, other than just a few people that like, you see online, there's not really anybody else. And then I would say one of my friends. One of my friends, his name is Danny. He is a day trader for like futures, stock options, things like that. When he was like 22 or 23, he had made over 100 grand like trading stocks, and like I was dead broke at that time. Like I had maybe a few $1,000s to my name, and he inspired me greatly to like get up and like really put in the work because anytime I would call him late at night, he would be sitting there reading or he'd be like on the charts, like working. And like it really inspired me because I'm like, okay, like if he's putting in the work and he's doing this, like that's what I'm going to start doing. So he was a big inspiration as well, along with just seeing miscellaneous people on the internet.
Mhm.
And then my dad. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's so true too with like I mean, you're looking up to them and like you have this respect for them, but like with your friend, it kind of goes around with the first you are the sum of the five people you're closest to,
Yep.
and you are a direct like show of that. Like
Mhm.
you have this friend, you have your dad who is also around you often. I would even say like the people that you follow on social media is a portion of that as well.
Mhm.
And you have all of these people showing you like what you need to be doing, and you just had like that wake up call. It's like, oh, I know now what to move on and start doing.
Yeah.
And look at you, you're absolutely crushing it, and you're growing exponentially. So I know we kind of touched upon this in the beginning, but what is your like in 5 years? Where do you see your agency being? Like, how big do you want to scale it to? Do you want it to just keep going and going? Do you have a direct number? Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah. Ideally, like I would say there's probably a total of about 100 coaches that like have the proper systems in place as of now because there's a lot of online fitness coaches. Like there's thousands of them out there, thousands. But like the people that it would make sense, there's probably a hundred to a few hundred max that would actually make sense to like that's who I want to work with because like as time has gone on, I have upped my standards for who I work with because I don't like my employees, they make their living off of how much money they can make. So if a coach is only doing 10,000 a month in new revenue and we're taking 10% of that, that means they're only making $1,000, like something like that. So,
Mhm.
you know, people who are able to make more. So, I mean, realistically, like the direction I want my agency to go, like I would love to have 50 of like the top coaches out of let's just say 100, so maybe half of the fitness population of like qualified coaches. I would love to be able to be the agency that they're like, oh, like if you need a closer, go to Manning. Like go to Manning Agency. Like my agency is Certified Closers. So like,
Mhm.
oh, go to Certified Closers. Like that's like I would just like to be known as the place to go. They deliver. They're going to close right. It's fairly priced, and they're going to treat you with respect. Like they're going to deliver on all the promises they tell you. Um, so I mean, like 5 years from now, I mean, realistically, I think like in less than 2 years, I'll have 50 coaches. And then 5 years from now, be in the position to have this scaled to the point where everything is like self-running. I'm not too involved with it anymore. Um, and I'm able to just kind of oversee most things and kind of take that step away. And then at some point down the road, I don't foresee myself running an agency forever. I would like to go into other business endeavors. So Once I get it to the point where it can be evaluated high enough, like, hand to somebody else who that wants to grow it in their own way.
Yeah.
And, kind of dig into something that I enjoy a little more.
Yeah, absolutely. What does that look like for you? I know that's kind of talking farther down the line and you're very invested in what you're doing now, but what do those other endeavors look like?
Yeah, so I have one specifically in mind that like I've always known that I wanted to do, and it's like food franchises, like restaurant
Oh.
franchises, things like that. So, tell you a little story actually about when I was younger. So I would always pick up jobs on the side, like if like
Mhm.
a buddy's dad was like, oh, like we're gonna go mow lawn, or like we're gonna do these things, like because I didn't have any money, my friends always had to buy me food, like so I didn't have any money. So anytime I was able to pick up something and make money, I was like, let's do it. So this one time, my buddy's dad owned a landscaping company for basically people who owned franchises, and so we did all this landscaping for like Popeyes, KFC's, Whataburgers, whatever. At the end of the day, a part of that deal was we would go to the owner's house and we would do all their landscaping as well, some of the lawns, weed eat, do all that stuff. So we went to this neighborhood somewhere in Houston. I can't remember where it was, but like somewhere west Houston. Went to this neighborhood that was completely owned by this family who had owned all these franchises. They had over 100 franchises to their name. And we went there. It was like the mom and dad's house, the brothers, the sister's house, like all these houses in this
Mhm.
cul-de-sac. They were
Yeah.
absolutely massive. They had like Audi R8s, they had Lamborghinis sitting outside, like they had all these insane things. And like I was like, oh god, I was maybe like 14 at the time, something like that, like super super young. And like I was obsessed with cars. Like I loved cars, and I saw all these awesome cars and I saw these beautiful homes, and I was like, man, what do they do? And then that's when I asked my friend's dad, like, what do these people do? Like, how do they afford all this? It's like they own franchises. They own like, Whataburgers, Popeyes, all these things, like whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, like that's what I want to do. And I have still had that idea in mind. And especially once COVID happened, I realized like, okay, what I want to do is get Whataburgers, because that was the only business that I recollect not shutting down. They were open 24/7. They never shut down. I was like, okay, Whataburgers, like that's the joint I want to get into. Like I want to be able to own three or four of those, and just have a business that's running nonstop. And then, once I have those, kind of just live off those and just do, investing, things like that.
Yeah.
And then be able to kind of give back at that point.
That's so funny that you're going from, well, very cool story, but it's funny that you're going from working in the fitness space to then wanting to
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
own all of these fast food franchises.
It's the money side of things. It's not.
Yes.
It's not. I don't care for the health when it comes to that. Like I love the
No,
health about this, but when it comes to money, like I just see that as a cash cow. So it's like
no,
that's
for
something
sure.
I'm like I saw them do it. I want to do it as well.
No, yeah, absolutely, 100%. I have a very similar like outlook, like wanting to scale. Everything is like a stepping stone. I
Yeah,
feel like in life, especially in your entrepreneurial journey, you start with one thing, you scale it up. You learn a lot from that. You go to another thing, and you scale that up.
yeah,
And it's really cool to see and be able to hear where you are now and see where you want to go as well. And I'm excited to watch that journey from. I mean, from when I started to know who you were, from Adrian hiring you to where you're going to be in the future. It's extremely impressive and inspiring all at the same time.
appreciate that.
Um, you're very welcome. So before we end our podcast today, do you have anything else you'd like to tell anybody listening? I have a variety of listeners between people who are trying to lose weight or are scaling their online fitness coaching business. But do you have anything that you would like to tell the listeners before we end off?
Yeah, the one thing I'll say, consistency, and that goes for everything. So whether you're losing weight, building muscle, wanting to start a business, consistency is the main factor that will change your life. So
Yeah.
once you can go from being like the occasional, oh, I'll do work today, I guess, or I'll do something today, or I'll do it tomorrow, or like I'll put it off till next week, to like, okay, I'm going to accomplish today or I'm going to accomplish multiple things today that would have taken me a week to do, or 2 weeks, or 3 weeks. So finding that consistency in whatever you're doing, being able to day by day know that I am putting in the work, there is no stones left unturned today. I have done everything I could have done to propel myself, my goals, my business all forward. And knowing that you have done what it takes, and like leaving each day behind with a sense of fulfillment rather than regret. Because that's something that I spent a lot of time doing, was regretting how I spent my days. And as soon as I got to the point where I no longer regretted it, and I was like, man, today was a successful day, that's when I started really seeing the fruits of my labor. And then ultimately, like, I'm a firm believer in this, like, God rewards hard work. So like if you put in the work, you will be rewarded. um, and like that's just staying diligent with everything, trusting the process, and knowing that like nothing is easy. Life is a marathon, it's not a sprint. Anything that comes easy goes fast. So focus on doing hard things.
That was a fantastic last note. Thank you so very much for that.
Yes.
I know that I myself learned a lot from you today, and I know that everyone listening did the exact same. So thank you once again for hopping on this podcast and sharing your story and everything you've learned in between.
Absolutely. It was an honor being here. I appreciate your time, Felicity.
I
And
appreciate
I appreciate anybody who listened.
it. Yeah. Well, thank you so very much.
Absolutely.